My fellow Sacramento Kings fans, I think a lot of you are going to be pretty angry at me after this podcast, but despite the Boston Celtics putting 144 points up on the Sacramento Kings in an absolute beatdown, I'm not mad about it. But I will be mad if the Sacramento Kings don't learn from the lessons that the Boston Celtics taught them tonight. And I'll explain to you what those lessons are right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Use promo code LOCKEDONNBA when you create an account, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and despite the Boston Celtics coming in here on the second night of a back-to-back after a overtime loss to the Golden State Warriors last night, despite the Boston Celtics being without their superstar in Jason Tatum and a really important player in Al Horford to boot, despite the Kings getting absolutely demolished by the Celtics tonight, I really am not in a bad mood. I'm not that upset. Now, there certainly is plenty to be concerned about, so make no mistake about it. The Kings are not getting a pass from me tonight. But I think tonight might end up being a necessary evil for the Sacramento Kings. Now, allow me to explain this. I think, in fact, I know I'm in the minority here because I've seen the reactions on social media. I've already seen the emails that you've sent me before this podcast is even out. So many of you like, Matt, this is what happens when the Kings play good teams. Even on their home floor, they look completely outmatched. Tonight, you are absolutely right. What is the major lesson that the Boston Celtics taught the Sacramento Kings tonight? It kind of falls in line with what Sacramento Kings head coach Mike Brown has been saying since training camp, really since the offseason. The gap between good and great is hard to cross. You have a great Boston Celtics team who is now the top team in the league, has the number one record in the league. I think they have one more win than the Minnesota Timberwolves, who, of course, the Kings will see here on the second night of a back-to-back on Saturday. We'll get to that later on in the show. You have a Celtics team that has not only established themselves as one of the best teams in the league, but has suffered the ultimate pain of defeat, making it to the NBA Finals and losing to the Golden State Warriors. This Celtics team is battle-tested. Sure, in a lot of ways, they pose a matchup nightmare for the Sacramento Kings, but it is perfectly apparent in almost everything that the Boston Celtics did tonight, the great status that they have achieved, and the good status of where the Sacramento Kings currently are. Now, maybe one of the reasons why I'm not too mad about it tonight is because this is kind of a reality check of really where the Kings are. And it's okay that the Kings are good. Now, it's never okay to get beaten down as badly as the Kings were on their home floor or otherwise. It's never okay. It's never acceptable. But what's truly unacceptable about tonight is if the Sacramento Kings don't take this firsthand experience of, oh, damn, that's what great is. Oh, damn, that's what we're trying to be. That's what we're trying to get to. We just were on the wrong side of it. We want to become the team that's doing that on the road to other up-and-coming teams on our second night of a back-to-back. That's what the Kings need to take away from this game. And I'm sure Mike Brown and his coaching staff and the team, they're going to go through an elaborate film session breaking down the X's and O's of everything that went wrong. But I hope these Kings players are putting their head on their pillow tonight and not able to fall asleep and just go on to the next one. I know it's important, to have a short memory in the NBA. But I hope their head is hitting the pillow tonight going, that's what greatness is. That's where we need to get to. And this game proved that we still have a long way to go. One of the perfect examples of the greatness that the Celtics have achieved, that Sacramento is clearly not there yet, is how they played on the second night of a back-to-back. Number one, even without Tatum and Al Horford, I think this Boston team was pretty upset with how last night ended. Their loss in overtime to the Golden State Warriors, right? This is a Celtics team that I honestly haven't checked. I doubt, with how good their record is, I doubt they've lost two games in a row so far this season. So maybe this was one of those cases of it didn't matter who the Celtics were going to play tonight, they were going to beat them. I don't think that's fair because that sounds like a cop-out for the Sacramento Kings, and I'm not here to make any cop-out excuses for the Kings. The Kings, especially with how they played in the first quarter, how they came out of the gate, how well they were shooting, scoring I think 41 points in the first quarter and having a lead at the end of the first quarter. Like it's not an excuse. It's not acceptable to say, oh, the Kings, like they were doomed to lose no matter what. Here is a Celtics team that after arriving in Sacramento at like 1 o'clock in the morning, after a late, hard, extra time or extra minutes overtime battle with the Golden State Warriors, they came in here to Sacramento. They had energy. They hustled all night long. They were moving the ball really well, despite the fact that they were shooting absolutely unbelievable from three-point range. They were moving the ball around the perimeter. They were establishing themselves on the inside. That doesn't mean they had a boatload of points in the paint. I think they finished with 48 points in the paint, but they were getting to the paint. They were drawing the defense in. They were moving the ball around the perimeter, getting open shot after open shot. And this Boston Celtics team is one of the best shooting teams in the league, and they showed you why tonight. So many things about this game that the Boston Celtics did, so many crazy numbers that we're going to run through here that are just more prime examples of a great team responding. And one of the major things that I think we saw from the Celtics tonight that the Sacramento Kings are lacking, and we're going to talk about this a lot in the next segment. The Celtics are a very mentally strong team. That might be a major weakness for this Kings team, is the mental side of things. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Let's get into some of these crazy numbers, starting with the fact that the Celtics, how do they respond with two top guys missing, including their superstar in Jason Tatum? They have five guys score 20 or more points. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. Now, I didn't see anything put out about that being an NBA record or NBA history or anything like that, so it's probably happened before. I have never seen it in person. Everybody was shooting the you-know-what out of the ball. Everybody was getting their touches. Now, it started with Jaylen Brown, who had not just a dunk of the year candidate, he dunked on all of freaking Sacramento in the second half during the third quarter, where the Celtics put up 39 points and just completely pulled away from Sacramento and really put the game to bed in that third quarter. He had a dunk there that was just like turn out the lights 15, 16 minutes early. Just an absolutely unbelievable dunk. But he had 28 points without hitting a single three-pointer. Meanwhile, Derek White also had 28 points, and he rained down 6 three-pointers. 30 fast break points. 30 fast break points for the Boston Celtics. Two crazy things about that. Number one, they're the team on the second night of a back-to-back playing a Kings team that likes to play fast. The Kings came into tonight with the strategy that the pace that the Kings like to play at was going to be a distinct advantage in them defeating Boston because of how much they played the night before, being on the second night of a back-to-back. Boston took that Kings strategy, turned it around, and shoved it in the Kings' faces with 30 fast break points. But the Kings only turned the ball over 7 times. So that doesn't tell me that the Boston Celtics were playing excellent perimeter defense, knocking the ball away and getting out in transition. That's telling me that the Kings just got flat out beat, outworked, out-hustled. If the Kings were making shots, didn't matter. Quick inbound pass, the Celtics were getting up the floor. If the Kings were missing shots, quick outlet pass, the Celtics were getting up the floor and getting good looks. The Kings got beaten at their own game tonight on a second night of a back-to-back. That is inexcusable. But that's what a great team does. Comes in and turns a disadvantage into an advantage. They shot 55% from the field, 52% from three-point range, 83% from the free throw line. Compare that to the Sacramento Kings, who didn't have a bad offensive night, 47% from the field, 47% from three-point range, did shoot terribly from the free throw line, 52% from the free throw line. What else is new? What's crazy is the Celtics only hit one more three than the Kings. You would think the Kings losing 144 to 119, them being down by around 30 points for a good portion of the night. You would have thought, okay, the Celtics are having this absolutely amazing shooting night. They probably had 10 plus threes on Sacramento. Nah, they hit one more, just one more, and beat the Kings this poorly, or this badly, I should say. The Celtics shot 22 of 42 from the three-point line. The Kings, 21 of 44. The Celtics had 35 assists tonight. Again, beating the Kings at their own game. That's where Sacramento has excelled, is moving the basketball. Now the Kings and their undefeated win 30-plus assists stat, that's still alive. The Kings only had 29 assists tonight, so they're still, I think, 11-0 on games where they have 30-plus assists. So good for them in that sense, but really they could have had one more assist tonight, and clearly it wouldn't have freaking mattered. And then on the rebounding-wise, it wasn't even close. 50 rebounds to 37 rebounds for Boston, an advantage of Boston. They held Sacramento to just 40 points, 20 of 42 shooting inside the paint. The Kings were just thoroughly beaten. But will they learn from this? Will they see how much better and what the Celtics did well and how they established themselves in a way that the Kings are trying to get to? That's a major question. How do the Sacramento Kings respond? We're going to talk about that in the next segment. But first, I asked Mike Brown after the game was over. I asked him, hey, this is a great team. This is where you want to get to. That gap seems pretty wide right now. What do you take away? What do you learn from tonight? And Mike shared a really, really interesting and important story about when he was in Cleveland and coaching LeBron James. I think you'll enjoy this. Take a listen. Mike, you've talked a lot about the gap between good and great, and that gap seemed pretty wide tonight between your team and the Boston Celtics. I mean, what do you take away from that? Is this almost a necessary evil for a team to experience something like this to see what that difference is in real time?
Yeah, for sure, because, like I said, sooner or later it has to matter to the players. And I say this, I'll never forget people talk about LeBron's greatness on the court. My first year in Cleveland, we were a show team back then. You can jump out and show, and they didn't shoot the three as much and some other things, and we worked on that all summer when I got there, and then we worked on it all at training camp, and we started out kind of slow my first year there, and I'll never forget, we were like 8 games in, and we were playing a home game. I can't even remember who we were playing against, and we were just getting killed in the pick and roll, and so I called a timeout. And finally, I said, hey, look, what do you guys want to do? We tried showing, we tried switching. You want to drop? What do you want to? And before I can get another word out, LeBron, as a young player, he stepped into the huddle, and he goes, excuse my French, but he goes, F that. We're an effing show team. We worked on it the whole training camp. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. Let's effing go. And I just stepped out the huddle. And from there, you go look at what our defensive rating was the rest of that season and the next 4 years. And sooner or later, all the great teams, whether it's Draymond and Andre Iguodala in Golden State, or even Tim, Avery Johnson, other guys in San Antonio. Every great team that I've been a part of, it's come from within at certain times, especially when you hit adversity. And so, we got to keep hitting adversity, and we got to keep trying to have it come from within and find a way to dig ourselves out of a hole like this by holding each other accountable throughout the course of the game. So, you got to go through this sometimes. long-winded answer.
There's something that Mike said there in that soundbite that I'm going to revisit and I want to talk about again later in the podcast when I talk about DeAaron Fox. Before that, though, I want to tell you that today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. And our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're preparing for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked for this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. 5 names for you: Brandon Podziminski, Tari Eason, Grayson Allen, James Wiseman, and Malachi Branham. Now, James Wiseman is actually really interesting to me because Wiseman obviously has not been good, right? He's been a bust. He's been a disappointment, but he has the size, he has the intangibles, and now he has the opportunity to potentially put some major points on the board. Isaiah Stewart is hurt. Wiseman has produced the last couple of games. Confidence overall in him is low, and rightfully so, but if nothing else, he's going to have the opportunity to put up better numbers. And those better numbers, of course, could be the difference between you winning and losing your week in fantasy. Sometimes all it takes is a handful of good games, a boatload of rebounds, and some block shots, and you win by 1 or 2 points. It's those sneaky things that you can do that can make a difference. That's why Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. And it's the same thing with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or you get your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning you're burning rubber. You're not burning cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. I talked about the Boston Celtics and how they were really mentally strong, mentally locked in tonight, willing to mentally and physically go the extra mile to, on the second night of a back-to-back, respond from last night's loss, respond by bringing that energy, beating that hustle, beating the Sacramento Kings at their own game, getting out in transition, right? I'm sure them knocking down a boatload of shots in the first quarter added to kind of that energy and gave them the second wind that they needed. But it started mentally. You could tell that they were locked in to start this game. Are the Sacramento Kings a mentally weak team? I think it's a fair question to ask. Now, there's a fine line between questioning their mental ability, or how mentally strong they are, and saying that this team is terrible. They're very mentally weak. They're not capable of mentally being or getting from good to great. I do think the mental side of games has been a weakness for this Kings team. I think Sacramento, especially on second night of back-to-backs, has mentally not been ready to go. Or they've been more mentally fatigued than they've been physically fatigued. We've seen them quit far too often. The Kings have lost 10 games now this season, right? 7 of those 10 games can pretty much be classified as blowouts. Like when the Kings lose, they are losing big this season. That is absolutely cause for concern. Now, before I continue, I asked Keon Ellis after the game about playing the Celtics on the second night of a back-to-back and learning from how the Celtics were able to respond and how the Kings have not been able to respond so far on second night of back-to-backs. And immediately, without me bringing it up, Keon talked about the mental side. I know I'm asking this before you guys actually do a film session and breakdown of everything, but what do you think you can learn from a team like Boston who responded this way on the second night of a back-to-back? Because I know that's been a struggle for you guys.
Sometimes it may be within, sometimes it's not in the film. Maybe we got to, get up for games, have a better start, finish quarters better or whatever it is. But, and when we do look at the film, I'm pretty sure there are some things, personnel-wise where we try to limit guys from getting to their spots or whatever it is. But I'm pretty sure there were some things on there too. But I think, it's more on us on this one.
I think he's right. And fair play to a two-way player to take the podium after the Kings got their ass kicked and say, look, I think mentally, like, this is on us. We know that there are things in film that physically we know we can clean up and do better, like defense and certain things like that, and certain X's and O's ways that the Celtics beat us tonight. But mentally, we didn't do a good enough job. Mentally, it's on us tonight. I like that from Keon, and I think he's absolutely right. And this is not the first time that we've heard him or Mike Brown or other players bring up that mentally Sacramento has not been prepared or mentally they've been weak. It was remember the second night of a back-to-back loss here in Sacramento against the Los Angeles Clippers. That was after the Kings beat the Thunder for the first time. That game without DeAaron Fox. That was part of the in-season tournament. The Kings said they kind of mentally checked out or they had a mental letdown game after the high and amazing win against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So this is something that they've talked about. This is something that they're recognizing is an issue. Mentally, they're just not where they're supposed to be. But they can get there. They've shown us they can do it. Think back to the playoffs, right? Think back to you lose on your home floor in Game 5. You're up 2-0. Now you're down 3-2, right? There's a chance for you to mentally completely check out. What do the Kings do? They go into the Chase Center where the Warriors all season long were really, really good. They go into Chase Center and they kick the Warriors' ass in Game 6 to force Game 7. Like, we've seen this team able to respond. In fact, even this season, for the most part, not every single time, but for the most part, after bad losses and after pretty significant beatdowns, the Kings have done a really good job responding. So the response aspect, I think they're mentally strong. Responding after a bad loss. This Kings team kind of pulls their head out of the stand a little bit, regroups, and attacks. We see them play some of their best basketball coming off of a bad loss, and they've done it a handful of times. Like I said, they've been blown out like 7 times already this season. But what about the second night of a back-to-back after you win? Because the Kings have won every single first game of a back-to-back so far this season. They've had 3 of them. They've won all 3 of them, and then they've lost badly in the 3 other nights or second night of back-to-back games. So it's not that they're mentally weak to not be able to respond after getting their ass kicked. It's that they're mentally weak not being able to respond after winning a game but exerting a lot of energy in that game and not rallying and getting themselves up enough and ready to play on that second night of a back-to-back, regardless of who their competition is. That's where the mental weakness of this Kings team comes from. Can Sacramento learn how to be mentally tough and strengthen themselves mentally without getting their ass kicked, right? Why does it take a beatdown? Why does it take 7 beatdowns for this Kings team to respond the way that we know they're capable of? It shouldn't. Are the Kings complaining too much, too? That's something that Mike brought up in the post-game press conference. In fact, there was a moment in this game now, some of you are not happy with officiating. Yes, the officials made mistakes tonight. At that point, the Celtics were already running away with the game. You could argue that in the second quarter and third quarter, the officiating maybe helped the Celtics pull away a little bit. If that's you, fine. I'm not spending more time on that topic than that. I don't think the referees are worth talking about more than that because that's not what this game's about. This game is about a great team kicking the crap out of a good team. But there was a moment in this game where everybody was frustrated with the officiating. And on an inbound, I think Jaylen Brown, after a made basket, tipped the inbound to delay the game. And the ref didn't call a technical foul or delay a game or whatever. The Kings bench, and I'm talking about the coaches, all the coaches, stand up, start hollering and yelling. Who comes down from the end of the bench to shut them up? It's Malik Monk. Malik Monk comes running down and yells at all of them, sit your you-know-what down. Sit down, shut up. And that's not the first time that Malik has done that so far this season. The Kings players and the Kings coaches sometimes get so involved in the officiating, and even if they have a necessary gripe, they allow themselves to get taken out of the game when they're focused on the officiating. And what does a good team like the Boston Celtics do? Takes full advantage of that frustration. Just like the Sacramento Kings took full advantage of Draymond Green's meltdown here in Sacramento around a month ago teams take advantage of when the Kings mentally check out or are mentally more focused on the officiating than they are on the actual game itself. Let's talk about DeAaron Fox a little bit. The birthday boy, DeAaron Fox, turning 26 years old. Happy birthday, DeAaron. Tale of two halves for Fox. I mean, he was red hot coming out of the gate, right? He was sensational. In the first half, 26 points, 6 of 8 from three-point range. 5 of those threes were in the first quarter. Had 3 steals in the first half. Also had like 3 or 4 assists. Like, he was amazing to come out, coming out of the gate. And I was all ready to talk about, really how much fun was that first quarter. The Kings were making everything. Like, Keegan Murray was hitting, Trey Lyles was hitting, Kevin Huerter was hitting, Domantas Sabonis was attacking the rim. Like, the Kings were hitting everything, and the Celtics, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, didn't matter. Like, everybody was hitting shots. That first quarter was fun as hell. And maybe that's one of the reasons why I also don't feel too bad about tonight's game, because there was a point where I was just sitting back and, as a basketball fan, not a Kings fan, because I didn't like what I saw on the scoreboard looking up on the Jumbotron, but as a basketball fan, watching what the Celtics were doing tonight and going, damn, like, that's just greatness. They look so, like, that kind of shot making, that kind of ball movement, like, just, you have to appreciate, right? You have to tip your cap, which is something that I think the Kings, to some extent, just kind of have to do tonight. But as fun as that first quarter was, and as fun as that first half was for the Sacramento Kings, second half, DeAaron Fox, 3 points. 0 of 2 from the field. All 3 points were scored at the free throw line. He went 3 of 4, had 1 rebound, no assists. Only played 7 minutes, 48 seconds. Now, Mike Brown ended up kind of waving the white flag pretty early in this one. Fox was dreadful in the second half. If we're being honest, he was. Most of the team was. And at that point, I think the Celtics had so thoroughly taken control of the game and taken the wind out of the Kings' sails that it wasn't worth even bringing him back in. Remember the soundbite that I played for you earlier about Mike? He was in there and he was talking about how LeBron came into the huddle and Mike stepped out and LeBron came into the huddle and said, this is the kind of team we are. This is what we do. You're doing this. You're doing this. You're doing this. He took control of the team and he led as the star. Is that what DeAaron Fox is supposed to do there? Mike did not say it had to be Fox directly. If I had an opportunity to ask a follow-up question, I would have asked that. But he's talked about accountability with this group and how it has to come from within. He used damn near all of his timeouts before the third quarter was over. The Kings were towards the end of the third quarter, and Mike had 1 timeout left. So Mike did his part, trying to call timeouts to get this team to freaking regroup. And at one point, he called a timeout after the Kings left Derek White wide open for a corner 3, and he ripped into the Kings, specifically Malik Monk more than anybody else, but he ripped into the team. Mike tried, but it takes accountability from within. Is that DeAaron Fox that's supposed to be in that huddle going, this is not who we are, regroup, wake the hell up because we're getting embarrassed right now? If so, I guess he didn't do it tonight. Or maybe it's someone else on the team that's supposed to do that. It feels like that kind of leadership, though, has to be DeAaron Fox's responsibility. And speaking of leadership, I don't put this all on DeAaron Fox. I really put this on the Sacramento Kings, period. After the game, so just to kind of give you a peek behind the curtain of how media works. Like, after the game, we go to the podium, we go to the press conference room, and Mike Brown, and they give us 2 players in Mike Brown, and then they open up the locker room for everybody else. Keon Ellis comes out first. We're talking about a two-way guy, a guy on a two-way contract who is a rotational player at best. He comes out and has to face the music and answer the questions after the Kings got their ass kicked and got embarrassed at home on NBA TV. Then, after a long break, Mike Brown comes out and talks to us. Mike always has to. He's the head coach. They didn't give us another player after that, and apparently there was almost nobody left in the locker room by that point. Now, I get the Kings were just embarrassed. They're probably frustrated. They want to get the hell out of there and regroup. They don't want to talk to us. I don't blame you. I don't blame any of them. I wouldn't want to talk to me either after a game like that. But that's where I'm like, shame on the Kings. Shame on somebody, Fox, Sabonis, whoever it was, who at that point didn't come to the podium and talk and face the music after that kind of bad loss. And to be honest with you, us Sacramento media, we're throwing softballs, right? We saw what happened. We don't need to, hey, how much do you guys suck? We're not going to do anything like that. We're going to talk about how the Kings can learn from this. Those were my questions that I was asking. Like, how do the Kings grow from this? How do they respond? What went wrong? It's not like the New York media who are going to start throwing darts and accusations at anybody. Maybe, again, we're talking about mental weakness. Maybe there's another example of that right there. After a night like tonight, I think a lot of us just need a drink to put it behind us. Now, unfortunately, at this point in time, Sackyard Community Tap House, a great sponsor here of the Locked On Kings podcast, is closed. But maybe I'll have them keep a beer ready for me on tap for me to pick up tomorrow to still get over tonight. But Sackyard Community Tap House, a phenomenal place for you to go and enjoy a Kings game. If you're watching road games or you're not coming to the home game, but you want a great place with Kings fans to just enjoy a drink, enjoy some good food trucks, enjoy some good wine, and just enjoy that Kings community and watch. There's no real better place than Sackyard Community Tap House out there. Rain or shine, year-round, it's an excellent place for you. They have their outdoor patio that has misters during the summer when it gets hot, fire pits in the winter when it gets cold. Of course, they have an indoor area as well. They have a lawn area where you can play all sorts of lawn games like cornhole and a giant Connect 4. It's a great place for you to bring your family and your pets as well. They highly encourage you to bring your dog by. It's just an amazing place to hang out and to be a part. And community is in their name for a reason. They're deeply ingrained into the community. They're community partners with so many amazing events that happen here in Sacramento. I had the opportunity to do a live watch party there in person earlier this year when the Kings beat the Lakers on the road. I'm going to have another watch party at some point. I'm also planning a live podcast from Sackyard Community Tap House, so keep an eye out for that. Sackyard Community Tap House is your official home of the Locked On Kings listener. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the #1 app for you to be buying your tickets, whether it's Kings tickets here inside the Golden One Center, Kings tickets for any kind of road game, any sporting event, football tickets. Maybe you're looking at going to the 49ers game for Christmas against the Ravens. That's going to be a massive game. Check out Gametime. They're going to give you the best deals out there. I got an incredible deal on tickets so my wife and my sister-in-law could come to the Kings versus Wizards game on Monday night. I got them row A, so the front row tickets of the upper bowl for $60 cheaper than they normally go. And that was with one of their last-minute flash deals that Gametime offers. They take the stress out of buying tickets, and in fact, they even reward you for buying tickets last minute. Plus, they have amazing views from your seat. You know exactly what your view is going to look like from whatever event you're going to, even a concert, a theatrical show, a comedy show, whatever it may be. They have great views and great tickets for you for all those different events out there. Plus, they don't hide any hidden fees or anything like that. The price of the tickets that they show is the price that you pay no matter what. So give Gametime a try for buying your tickets. When you create an account on Gametime, use our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Overall, ladies and gentlemen, it might not feel like it tonight, and maybe you're waking up the next morning and you're still hurting from tonight's Kings loss. It's the Kings are fine. They're 16-10 on the season. This is coming from someone who, you remember, if you listened back to the start of the season when the Kings defensively were still struggling and offensively were really, really bad, I was concerned at that point in time. We have seen enough at this point. The Kings came into tonight's game 7 games above 500. They're 16-10. They're still above schedule of where they were last season. This Kings team is fine. Now, that doesn't mean that they're still on a one-way track to winning a championship, right? I see the discussion on social media. After every single loss, or really during every single loss, the discussion is the same. Kings need help. Monty McNair needs to get to work. The Kings need to make some changes. The Kings need to make a trade. Blah, 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 blah. You're probably right. If the Kings really want to be true championship contenders, they're probably a piece or two away. We can acknowledge that. But the Kings, as they are right now, is not bad. They're a good team. Never mind what Kevin O'Connor from the freaking Ringer says when he wants to cherry pick and only talk about the Kings after losses and ignore them when they're beating Oklahoma City twice or the Minnesota Timberwolves or whoever. Screw those opinions. Screw that cherry picking nonsense, because the Sacramento Kings, while Kevin might be right in his assessment that this Kings team does not necessarily look like a contender and has holes to prevent them from actually winning a championship, he's right. But he's not right in tearing this team down every single opportunity he gets, undermining Domantas Sabonis, going freaking MIA and not mentioning a damn thing about the Kings when they're having big nights, but coming out of the weeds and tweeting nonsense when the Kings are playing poorly. Just goes to show he's either not watching Kings basketball or he just does not care, and he's going to push his bias and push his beliefs and not give the team credit, which if that's the case, then he's not worth listening to. And I actually like Kevin O'Connor and a lot of some of the takes that he's had. I've had a lot of respect for him. He's losing respect for me with this hill that he wants to die on with this Kings team. But the Kings are fine. I'm telling you, this team, I see a lot of people saying, this is a first-round exit team at best. First-round exit in the playoffs team at best. Matt, they haven't gotten any better. They've gotten worse. I wholeheartedly disagree. I think this Kings team, if they rolled this group into the playoffs, granted, it depends on the matchup, right? You're probably not feeling pretty good if you're matched up with the New Orleans Pelicans in the first round. But if this Kings team rolls into the playoffs, I think they're a top 6 seed. They're not worried about the play, and I think this is a top 6 seed right into the Western Conference playoffs team. I think they've earned that expectation, give or take injuries, and knock on wood, hope they don't get any kind of injury or anything like that. But this team, with how much better DeAaron Fox is playing, how Domantas Sabonis has improved, with Kevin Huerter hopefully playing better, with Keegan Murray playing like the third piece of a big three, Malik Monk continuing to be a 6th Man of the Year candidate off the bench, and just a little more input from the supporting cast. Yeah, this Kings team absolutely can win a playoff series and maybe make a push for trying to win 2. I've told you this a couple times recently. And I'm not changing my stance as of right now. I still think it's more likely that the Kings take this team, ride it out for this year. They're going to look for improvements if they can at the trade deadline. I just don't think the right ones are going to be out there for them. I could be wrong. Who knows? At this point in time, it doesn't feel like it makes sense for the Kings to make a big swing, or if they're going to try and make a big swing, I just don't think they're willing to offer what it would take to make that swing this year. And I think the Kings are just going to ride it out with what they have, see how far they can go, and make decisions this offseason. But we'll see. We talked about how good this Kings team has been at responding. Well, here you go. An opportunity to respond on Friday. The Phoenix Suns here in Sacramento. Now, Kevin Durant is expected to play, unlike when the Kings beat the Suns earlier this season in Phoenix when Kevin Durant did not play. Of course, Bradley Beal's hurt again, so Kings don't necessarily have to worry about that. But do the Kings respond, and do they continue their pattern of winning game 1 of a second night of a back-to-back? And then all eyes on Saturday, right? A Timberwolves team that you've already beaten, but a Timberwolves team that's the best in the West on a second night of a back-to-back when the Kings have been dreadful. You just saw firsthand what it takes to win on the second night of a back-to-back from the Boston Celtics. Will you learn from it? I'm more interested in how the Kings play on Saturday than I am on Friday. They could respond and play really, really well and kick the crap out of the Suns on Friday, and I would feel really good after that, and I'm hoping that happens. But I'm going to know, I think I'm going to learn a lot about how the Kings respond to tonight from what happens on Saturday night against the Timberwolves. Of course, I'll be at both of those games. I'll have post-game podcasts for you after both of those games. So I hope you will join me for that. Also, join me on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Kings. I'm going to be joined by Damian Barling from D-Lo and KC on ESPN 1320 Radio. Damian and I, it's weird to have a discussion like this after the Kings get their ass kicked, and I'm sure we'll talk about this game tonight a little bit tomorrow. But we need to have a discussion about DeAaron Fox playing at an MVP level and not getting the recognition compared to other players that he's on the same level on statistically, eye test-wise, whatever it may be. Fox is not getting that MVP respect that he deserves. D'Lo and I will discuss that in detail on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Kings, so keep an eye out for that. Appreciate your support so much. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.